India, by and large, is a country of nature worshippers. Amazingly, till to date, the nature worshipping has been going on in this country compared to most other countries of the world. Say here, the mountains, the rivers, forests, the very earth, the water bodies, soil, air, sky, all these are objects of worship. And in each place, a high place is a high locality in every human settlement has been venerated from time immemorial and might have stopped that veneration, but it has been an ancient practice. So many high places, and particularly those associated with the watershed, they are considered the seats of local deities. And these local deities get merged into major natural forces, into major deities. So where the domain of one ends, the other begins, is very, very uncertain. If you go to the story of the Western Ghats, these mountains have been existing almost for 88 to 90 million years. And their origin can be traced to the breakup of India from a landmass called Madagascar. So actually it appears that a mountain vertically broke off. So one half remains in Madagascar and another half comes along the Indian west coast as the Western Ghats. So it's almost like a mirror image. We have something resembling Western Ghats in the Madagascar east coast. And coming to the origin of the west flowing rivers, when India broke off from Madagascar, we along the west coast of India inherited the Western Ghats, which is a steep vertical terrain, which is also partly considered an upliftment. So naturally, the water falling towards the west into the Western Ocean straight away, and that was in the olden days Tethys Sea. The Tethys Sea became extinct with the continental drift, India moving northwards and all, and we got the Arabian Sea in that place. So the west coast flowing rivers have been steeply falling along the vertical side, the split side of the Western Ghats, and steeply, and they have therefore mighty waterfalls, like for example in Uttar Kannada, the Jog Falls, then the Unjalli Falls, or what's called Lashington Falls, then the Magod Falls. Like that, each of the west flowing river has a vertical waterfall falling from the broken edge of the subcontinent of India, western subcontinent. So, and if we consider the origin of the west coast has to be considered as a deposit of soil from the mountains, from the Western Ghats. The rivers flowing almost for 88 million years have been bringing a lot of silt, soil, rocks, everything, and dumping along the west coast. And adding to that is the Arabian Sea washing silt and sand, creating altogether our west coast. So our west coast up to almost 80 meters height, even the highlands up to 80 meters of height along the west coast could be considered deposited soil, a combined work of the west flowing rivers and the Arabian Sea together. So therefore, whether it is Aghanashini river of Kumta, Sharavathi river of Honavar, the adjoining hillocks and plateaus, the flat hills, which are topped with laterite, they either slant towards Sharavathi or towards the Aghanashini. So, depicting the fact that these soil mounds have been there ever since the rivers started flowing, adding to the soil mounds, and we have a very unique kind of landscape along the coast of coastal plains, then coastal hills not rising beyond 80 meters because they are flat hills, the plateaus and flat hills, and through them the rivers wind their ways. And by depositing soils on the sides, the rivers got trapped in specific channels. And when they meet the ocean, the river spread into the estuary. So, from Mangalore to almost Karwar, there is the same story. Now, the Western Ghats are flanking the west coast and like a immense vertical wall with cliffs. And how long this has been existing? Almost for 88 to 90 million years. And see how long the forests existed. The forests here have been more primeval and can be, the oldest forests can be traced to the Gondwana land. So we have the Sambi forests called Myristica swamps. They are seen in small patches here and there, and the relatives, the wild nutmegs, the Myristicas, the members of the Myristica family, still there in the Amazon forest in the South America, in the Congo forest, that is a tropical equatorial African forest. Then we have the New Guinea and parts of Southeast Asia in the Western Ghats, like that. So here all you find wild nutmegs growing, though today oceans separate them by thousands of square kilometers. But if you take a sample of a tree, a wild nutmeg tree, you find red juice coming from the bark, a large seed, a single fleshy cover, the fruit cover, and the cover splits on one side, exposing the large seed covered with a golden yellow or reddish aril, a fleshy aril, which is good food for large birds like hornbills and imperial pigeons in Western Ghats. In the Amazon forest, equatorial forest, same type you find nutmeg family members. Their hornbill-like birds called toucans, they feed on those fruits. And anywhere you cut the bark of these trees, we get a red syrup falling, red juice falling, a latex falling. So how amazing it is that a family of wild nutmegs, called the Myristicaceae, unite these land masses which are separated today by thousands of kilometers of ocean, but the characteristics of this nutmeg family is so strikingly similar, though geographically separated by vast oceans. So showing that all these had a common origin in one place in the Gondwana land, where the earliest flowering plants bloomed before Africa, South America all split, and before the Atlantic was born, the family of flowering plants had evolved. So our Western Ghats have such a hoary past dating back to several million years, older to Himalayas by at least 35 million years. And therefore the west flowing rivers from the Western Ghats, which are running short in distance, immediately falling to the ocean, reaching to the ocean in short runs on the plains and widening into the estuary. These rivers are the most ancient in the Indian subcontinent, older to Ganga and Yamuna by almost 35 million years. So such a story, the Aghanashini River in Kumta, or starting from Sirsi and another branch from Sidapur, and so also the Sharavathi originating in the mountains of Shimoga district, but falling steeply to the coast in the Jog, forming one of the most majestic waterfalls of the country, and that is a steep fall. It has been falling directly into the ocean once, but by eroding the soil, eroding the rocks through several million years, Sharavathi carved out a channel, a deep canyon-like channel through the Western Ghats mountains through millions and millions of years. And the river, the Jog Falls, must be still receding towards Shimoga if allowed to fall in its full might by eroding the soils. So, like that, ethically speaking, the ancient people of this coast have been venerating these rivers as goddesses, worshipping these rivers as goddesses. That's why they have names such as Netravati, Sharavathi, Gangavali, Aghanashini, Kali. They are all equated to goddesses. And people never thought dams should be built to control them, to take out the water, to generate electricity. But first major intervention came in the Sharavathi River as the Linganamakki reservoir, Linganamakki Dam, almost submerging about 300 villages, and people were evicted and they were settled elsewhere. So a culture associated with the river, starting from the maybe Shimoga district, Sagar Taluk, and ending or reaching the ocean at 1 hour, the Sharavathi mouth. So this river has such a hoary past, but the river has been given very wantonly bad treatment by developers. So electricity was a prime need, no doubt about it. And electricity meant progress. So Sharavathi River contributed almost towards 40% of hydroelectric power for Karnataka state. So development is necessity, industries are necessity, lighting is necessity. So from that point of view, the development, and that have become a convenient slogan today, conserve and develop, like that. So, but this slogan is opportunistically being exploited time and again, conserve and develop, like that. What is development? Building any dam is a development. Building any port is a development. So, and it is called, ironically, sustainable development. But what is the yardstick for sustainability? This yardstick is very, very flexible. It is time bound and opportunistic, and it can be in forestry also. They say sustainable harvest of timber. So sustainable harvest of timber for the last 150 years, we saw major depletion of our timber forests, and later on depletion of hardwood timber. We have come to the softwoods, especially from 1940s for running plywood factories, matchbox factories, and the kind of forests which have been protecting very important watersheds of Sharavathi River, watershed of the Aghanashini River, Kali River, Gangavali River. See, these west-facing slopes of the Western Ghats receive very heavy rainfall seasonally. So, in spite of such a heavy rainfall, there has been no history of any major landslide happening until recent 1980s, 90s, or then only starting some landslide. But from the early 21st century, we have started witnessing major landslides. So, why these landslides are happening in the Western Ghats, especially in Karnataka or in Kerala Western Ghats, in Wayanad, in Munnar, like that. See, these landslides are happening on the steeper side of the Western Ghats, the side which broke off from Madagascar. But how these are happening in the recent decades and not in the historical past? Because there has been mechanisms for the trees characteristically growing on the steep slopes. So through millions of years, several million years, these trees have developed mechanisms. They are bioengineering mechanisms these trees have. They have very large supporting plank-like projections from the base of the trees called buttresses. How vertical structures in engineering are supported by building buttresses sideways. So for additional support, these trees developed buttresses, particularly growing on the steep slopes since millions of years. So for millions of years, the steep slopes of the Western Ghats have been protected by trees which have got special mechanisms like stilt. Now we also support the concrete roof by stilt while building, or we give buttresses for dams and buildings like that. So the plants also, the very ancient families of plants which are characteristically growing on steep slopes, they have huge buttresses, some of them have small buttresses, and many of them have stilt roots, which are aerial roots, which give additional support on sliding soils otherwise. So, like this, the nature, the humans, and the development, in the early days, development was mainly origin of agriculture, development of agriculture, farming systems, which included shifting cultivation, permanent cultivation in valleys, growing of spices in spice gardens, which have arecanut as a major crop. Like that, cultures developed, which have um, conservation and sustainable use. Now, if you see the typical pre-colonial land use, you find that in every human settlement, in a village, the communities protected specially an excellent patch of forest on the highland, and that is not to be tampered with. That forest is named after some local deity of the village. We call it local deity, but for the village community, that is the supreme deity. So that special type of forest protected, sheltering the watershed, and that is called, in Uttara Kannada, it is called Kan forest. Kan forest. So we don't discriminate today. For us, Kan, Kadu, all means forest. But for the early settlers, agricultural settlers, there used to be a distinction between Kan and the Kadu. Kan is sacred forest, where the deities are sheltered in under the canopies of dark, evergreen, lofty forests. And these forests have high degrees of endemic vegetation of the Western Ghats, endemic species. And today many of them are in the red list of the IUCN, and along with tree species which are high endemics, we also get high degree of endemism in the amphibians, high degree of endemism in the fishes of the streams and rivers. For example, Sharavathi river, the streams and the river have special fishes, special fishes, first time records called Sistura nagodiensis from one tributary of Sharavathi. Then Batasio sharavadiensis, another species, also named after Sharavathi. These are very endemic and recorded from particular forests, and these forests came from pristine watershed areas which have been preserved, and these kind of endemic fishes require perennial water. So these rivers are associated with perennial waters because they have been largely coming from the Khan forest. Khan forest, every village used to have a Khan, and the Khan area used to be something like minimum 30 to 40 hectares to maybe 1,000 hectares. Coming to the pre-colonial culture of people in the central Western Ghats of Karnataka and including the west coast. Our investigations reveal that there was some kind of decentralized system of forest management. In every locality occupied by agriculturists, a prime forest, which is almost a primitive or primordial forest, has been conserved in very critical areas from where flow the stream water or associated with swamps or ponds and like that. So they're centered around water body and a primary patch of forest. So primary forest patches have tendency to protect soils, where soils are deep and they are well protected by various kinds of root systems, and the water used to flow incessantly into the stream not flooding in peak of rainy season, also clear streams, as till today you can get in the stream of Yana in Kumta Taluk. So where it is, Yana is a sacred place, you find sacred rocks and almost nearly primeval forests around, and we find very crystal clear water in steady flow throughout the year. And so this is a ideal example for a culture which used to be prevalent in almost every human settlement. A settlement of agriculture is. So in the Sorab Taluk of Shimoga, 1868, this D. Brandis, he was the first Inspector General of Forests of India. He surveyed the forests of Sorab Taluk and he recorded there are two types of forests. One, a evergreen forest with very large trees, mostly softwooded, rich in wild pepper, rich in Caryota urens, which is the toddy palm, and the people used to tap the toddy, and it used to make a good base for sugar, and even the alcohol distillation from that also was a kind of job for certain communities, and and various other NTFPs. For fruits could be collected, seeds could be collected, tubers could be collected, wild pepper could be collected from the Khan forest, but trees were not to be cut, and because these forests were considered sacred, and each Khan used to have one or more gods, one or more deities. Now till today, there is one Khan near close to Sorab town. It is called Hale Sorab Khan, which is almost 1,000 hectares originally. But today the area might have diminished. Like that, almost 13,000 hectares of Khan forest, sacred forests, were recorded from the Soraba Taluk by Brandis, the first Inspector General of Forests, in 1868. And side by side to the Kan forest, evergreen Kan forest, where leaf shedding forests, not evergreen, leaf shedding. Leaf shedding forests are recorded as dry forests. In the summer, often fire used to burn the dry forest, and the dry forest was called Kadu, not Kan. So the Kadu frequently used to get burnt in summer months, especially ground vegetation, but the burning would stop once the fire reaches the Kan forest. So the landscape, pre-colonial landscape, as reflected in the report of Brandis, the first Inspector General of Forests, was a mosaic of large sacred groves preserved almost in every village as Kan forest, from where non-timber forests produced for subsistence and sale could be collected in a controlled manner but not ready to be cut. And then the secondary other forests, the leaf shedding forests, where people can collect the timber, collect firewood, collect leaf manure for agricultural purpose, like that. And some patches of the forest were burned to create grasslands. The grasslands were fit for cattle grazing. They are called banas. And then in the valleys, there used to be incessant flow of water. The Kans being little high places on the hilltops, on the upper plateaus and all, the water used to flow down, and the people used to make bunds, reservoirs, mini reservoirs, and those reservoirs were used for irrigating lands, like that. So there was not a centralized damming system for rivers, but a decentralized system of creating mini check dams on mountain streams and using the water for irrigation. And the region, the entire Karnataka, Western Ghats used to be a rich reservoir of spice plants, particularly pepper, then wild nutmegs, then wild mangoes, and various fruits, and then cinnamon, wild nutmeg used also for medicinal purposes, like that, many NTFPs. So this landscape also favored rich wildlife, because the grasslands created by humans and periodically burned so that new flush of tender grass appear almost every year, favoring grazing animals, and grazing animals, depending on them, were the tigers and other carnivorous animals. So there was a healthy equilibrium. And in the early British period, particularly from 1850s to 1870s, dozens of tigers were shot down in Uttara Kannada district. Today, for conservation of every tiger, we spend crores of rupees. But they were vandally hunted, there were so many. But the people used to worship tigers also as Hulidevaru. In several villages, we find Hulidevaru Khan. So Khan, as I told you, was a sacred forest in the traditional land use system. So also, Khans are dedicated to goddesses. So Karikan Amma. Karikan Amma is today Karikan Parameshwari. A temple has been built for Karikan Amma and called Karikan Parameshwari temple. But fortunately, the forest, the Khan forest, has been protected. I think it is almost 25 to 30 hectare of primeval rainforest rich in Dipterocarpus indicus and Dipterocarpus indicus, Dipterocarpus species are characterized Malaysian and Brunei forests. They are the heartland of rainforest in Southeast Asia, but we have fragments of such rainforest still in Western Ghats, and they are mostly associated with the Khan forest. So, Katale Khan, again the seat of a unique swamp in the Western Ghats, which has also very high species diversity. And at the bank of Sharavathi river, Katale Khan is dedicated to a local deity called a Buddha, Katale Khan Buddha. So we may wonder, we often today in modern days we associate Buddhas with evil spirits. But among the local agriculturists and collector gatherers, the Buddhas were fatherly deities. They call reverentially Buddhappa and Chaudamma, like that for the mother goddess. Today Chaudamma may be upgraded into Chaudeshwari and maybe followed up with by building big temples. But many places temples coexist with the ancient Khans, and this is very common in Sagar Taluk, Sorab Taluk, Tirthalli Taluk, like that, and many parts of which come in the catchment areas of Sharavathi. And each stream has high endemic fishes in the Sharavathi river. And so we even our team studied 8 tributaries of Sharavathi in the Sagar Taluk, and these tributaries each draining one patch of forest. So referring to the catchment area of Sharavathi, we made some study from Indian Institute of Science, Center for Ecological Sciences. Our team made certain studies. One is on forest and another is on the streams, stream fishes particularly. So we selected 8 tributaries of Sharavathi river west flowing before the Jog Falls, before coming to the Honavar Taluk. So in the Sagar Taluk particularly, we studied these 8 streams or mini rivers, tributaries. 4 of them coming from the eastern side and 4 from the western side. The western streams, their catchment areas are more covered with evergreen forests, whereas the eastern streams, more of plateaus, easily accessible to humans, dominated by acacia plantations, teak plantations, eucalyptus plantations, scrub, and less of forest. So, streams coming from different sides, but joining Sharavathi river or directly now getting into the Linganamakki reservoir. So, what are the fishes in these streams? So, we found almost 21, 22 species of fishes, especially our fish specialist, Dr. Srikanda, found about 21 species of fishes. And amazingly, the western streams used to be richer in fish species compared to the eastern streams. One thing, eastern streams used to have more common fishes, which are found anywhere in India. Western streams used to have high degree of endemism. So, because these are coming from forests which are having high endemism in vegetation, in particularly trees. So, we linked the forest study, the percentage of endemism in the catchment area, forest, of every stream. And we found more the endemism among the trees. Endemism means exclusive to Western Ghats. Trees which are exclusive to Western Ghats. So more the endemism percentage in the trees in the catchment, more are the endemic fishes in the streams, more are the rare fishes, more are the new fishes like Sistura, Nagodiensis, Batasio, Saravathiensis, like that. So, whereas the common streams coming from the common forests, they used to have common fishes, they hardly of any conservation value. Anywhere in India you get those species. So, this is a landmark work because here we find fish live as a part of the landscape. So, the landscape elements, the kind of landscape element is very decisive on the composition of fish species in the connecting stream. So, this is a very important find, and it highlights the need for conservation of endemic forests. If you conserve more endemic forests in the catchment area of a stream, we have more rare species. Not only regarding the fish, even the amphibians. For example, the Katale Khan, it's a Khan. In 2.5 square kilometers, our team, especially Dr. Guru Raja, amphibian specialist, he recorded 35 species of amphibians in just 2.5 square kilometers, which is in the catchment area of Sharavathi River. And 85% of them are endemic to Western Ghats. Only 15% have wider distribution. You just make a comparison with Maharashtra Western Ghats. Maharashtra Western Ghats, Maharashtra has more Western Ghats than Kerala, Tamil Nadu or Karnataka. But Maharashtra Western Ghats underwent a volcanism, Deccan volcanism. 65 million years back, the earth witnessed the largest volcanism in the world. That's called Deccan volcanism. Almost 160,000 square kilometers of land and waters in the ocean were covered with volcanic lava, and through a few million years, this volcanism continued, and that means Maharashtra Western Ghats, the forests are not as old as the southern Western Ghats of Goa, Karnataka, Kerala, Tamil Nadu, except one district of Maharashtra, the southernmost Ratnagiri district, that is still the primitive part of the Western Ghats, which escaped Deccan volcanism. So, when we have conservation problem, we need to consider that where there is more endemic tree vegetation, high percentage of endemism, blindly conserve that forest. Look for further biodiversity anytime. You are likely to find more fish, more insect diversity, more bird diversity, rarer animals, reptiles, birds, mammals. The rarer ones occur where there is more evergreen percentage in the forest. And another significant thing is, if a forest is more evergreen, it has more biomass. Higher the evergreenness of a forest patch, higher is the biomass. And 50% of that tree biomass is carbon. So, from carbon conservation and climate security, we need to have more primeval forest. Primeval forest need to be restored. Once we make a plantation, whether it is teak or acacia or even a secondary forest, what we witness is collapse of the biomass by almost 50% or even less. And so, therefore, in the catchment areas of the rivers, particularly Sharavathi River or Aghanashini River, first thing we need to have high percentage of evergreen forest, and more effort should be for restoration of evergreen forest, which cannot be achieved in one step or two step. It has to be achieved in a natural, human-aided succession to make it a little rapid. Otherwise, it will take several lifetimes to get back what we have lost, the heritage which spans back to the origin of flowering plants in the Gondwana land. So our Khans have some such species dating back to such ancient times. So now what kind of human impacts are happening? As far as Aghanashini River is concerned, no dam has been built so far. There has been much effort to build dams in Aghanashini to execute, but there has been a lot of public protest and which have been so far successful. But worse thing is the government is considering pirating the river itself, taking it to the drier Deccan, linking with other east flowing rivers. So this could be quite baffling. How such a sacred river, which has 88 to 90 million year old history, can be written off in a matter of seconds. The fate can be decided by humans. So it is really an ironical situation we are passing through, and bulk of the people think that it is necessary for the development. It is more for water security of the Deccan, the cities like Bangalore and Hubli and such kind of mega cities. But there is less thought that these places had their own water bodies too. They had very huge lakes. Every village, every town was built up on a mosaic of lakes and the lands in between. And that used to be a water-centered culture in the past until rampant industrialization. Rampant industrialization and exclusive need for water guzzling industries requiring so much of water. So they want the rivers to be directed. They want more power also by harnessing these rivers, though there are many ways of getting power without disrupting the river flow today. But still, it is surprising that the government speaks in terms of diverting the river flow totally. So, what will happen to the estuaries of these rivers, Aghanashini River, Sharavathi River? Sharavathi River the estuary is already badly affected because of not only Linganamakki Dam, later came Garsappa Dam. So both these rivers producing electricity keep on releasing fresh water both in summer, in the dry summer as well as in the rainy season. These fresh water keep diluting the salinity of the estuarine part. Estuarine part otherwise, in natural estuary of Aghanashini, there is gradation of salinity. Salinity highest, almost nearing seawater, almost 35 ppt, close to the river mouth, and then gradually decreasing upstream up to 10, 15 to 18 kilometers, the salinity become lesser and lesser. So, in these intermediate salinity areas, we find number of marine organisms. They use these areas for their juveniles to grow up. They require not high salinity, but very low salinity, gradually higher salinity. So the estuary gives a gradation of salinities, and not only salinity, estuary guarantees good food and shelter for many marine organisms, not only fishes, but also prawns, also the crabs, which all together earn for the country hundreds of crores rupees worth of foreign exchange, particularly prawns and by export of fishes. We don't think that many of these marine fish depend on these river mouths, the estuaries, for their juveniles, as their nurseries, as feeding places, as shelter places, where they grow, they become adults, subadults, adults, and when they are able to lay eggs, they go to the marine areas in search of seagrasses areas or rocky places or coral areas where they lay the eggs and their juveniles, young ones, larvae, they come in search of the estuaries. But today, powerful forces are working against this, not understanding the ecology or closing the eyes to the natural ecology of the region. One is river mouth for establishing ports. Once port come, the river mouth has to be widened, river mouth has to be dredged, deepened, and what happened to the bottom living fishes, bottom living food for fishes, bottom living prawns, the shellfish. So a lot of food material is in the bottom of the natural estuary, but once it is deepened for ships to come to the harbor, then that's the end of the estuarine ecosystem. So Sharavathi, as today a fishing harbor, now it's already earmarked for making a bigger harbor, which will require dredging and total annihilation of the estuarine ecosystem of Sharavathi River, where ironically the coastal zone management map released by NCSM Chennai for Government of India depicts the fish breeding area in Sharavathi as 5 kilometer interior, nearly 5 kilometer interior in the estuary. See, the breeding fish are marine. So how do they look at this map and see where the juvenile should go? They have to go 5 kilometers interior for breeding because there is a line of demarcation, fish breeding area. In Aghanashini, it is 1.5 kilometer interior. So in every river mouth where a port is visualized, destined to come, if people don't object, the fish breeding areas are shown interior 1 to several kilometers. So this is baffling me as a member of the Coastal Zone Management Authority of Karnataka. I had questioned this logic, but no one was there to answer this question. They said answer will be given. Answer never came. Even my question was not even recorded properly. So it is very clear there is a strong pressure working for establishment of ports in the river mouths, but a comparison of today's natural looking Aghanashini estuary with Sharavathi estuary is a real eye-opener. Aghanashini estuary has more than 80 species of fishes. The fishery is done. So there is to be rainy season, growing of salt-tolerant kaga rice in the estuarine rice fields of Aghanashini called Gajani rice fields, which used to be more than 2,000 hectares of rice fields in the Aghanashini estuarine banks. And today, there is not much of importance given to promotion of rice cultivation in these estuaries. That is, agriculture department considers it as a fishing area and fishery department considers it as agricultural area. So the farmers are benefited not by this department or that department, and therefore the Kaga rice cultivation is neglected, and this very rare variety which has been protected by traditional farmers through last few thousand years. Maybe I can say ever since the collapse of Indus Valley culture 3,500 years ago, there is likelihood of the farmers coming along the coast and entering through the river mouths and growing the wild rice like kaga, and they made rice fields for them, and this centuries and centuries old cultivation is today facing extinction. With that, fishery collapse also is imminent, not only estuarine fishery but also marine fishery. How short-sighted we are in, particularly from administrative terms. We don't see the livelihoods of lakhs of fishermen are dependent on the coastal ecology, maintenance of the ecological systems. There is no need for any kind of input into the estuarine rice field. Fertility is natural, water is natural, salinity mingling is natural, fish come natural. So everything is natural. The question is only of harvesting, like that. So with the least input, the best output was obtained, and that was they are classical models in sustainable economy. So, and off season the farmers used to have other things. They will be doing other works like even weaving clothes or weaving mats with the indigenous material, like that. So, but if we take Sharavathi river, Kaga rice equivalent, nothing is there today because there is hardly any salinity. Salinity is less than 5 ppt most of the time, except very close to the river mouth. So the salinity dependent mangroves, high salinity dependent mangroves have disappeared. Low salinity dependent mangroves are persisting in Sharavathi, and high salinity requiring fish have vanished. Most of the prawns have disappeared, and there has been crash in production of bivalves. Only one or two species of commercial bivalves are remaining in that in scanty number in Sharavathi estuary, but Aghanashini has 8 species of commercial food bivalves. They are also crashing due to overexploitation and utilization in places other than local areas where traditionally dependent on this excellent food bivalves. But today these are becoming the class dishes in the star hotels of Goa and other places at very fabulous prices. But what used to be poor man's food, the shellfish, that is almost getting extinct. We need immediately conservation measures, but still all the 8 species are for name's sake present. So by better management practice, because today Aghanashini is a Ramsar site, internationally known, so there is a management system also coming out slowly, and hopefully this will protect Aghanashini estuaries for generations to come. But Sharavathi's case is unfortunate, though a sister river of Aghanashini, equally mighty, but devoted for power production. And then if the pump-in storage project comes, then from Garsappa Dam, there is little chance of water getting down into the Sharavathi estuarine part, because in summer, when water is scanty, even in Linganamakki reservoir, for pump-in storage, I visualize there will be scarcity of water. So there, the authorities are most likely to close the Garsappa Dam and keep on pumping that water for generating electricity, and this will where the farmers have adjusted to from medium salinity to high salinity and low salinity. Low salinity after the dams coming and incessant flow of fresh water into the estuary, the salinity has become low. So on the river banks, many people have taken to growing plantation crops, cash crops like arecanut, pepper, nutmeg, cocoa, like that, and fruit trees. But the imminent danger from the pumping storage is in case, and as most likely, if Garsappa Dam is closed for pumping storage, water cycling, then the salt water is likely to reach Garsappa. And again, the agricultural systems which have adapted through last 40, 50 years to low and medium salinities have to change or going to collapse. So there is very little concern shown for the local cultures, local farmers, local fishermen. They are neglected a lot. So, and also, if we consider Kali River also has a series of dams for power generation. These several dams generate power and leave freshwater, but less freshwater flow compared to Sharavathi. Therefore, almost all the 8 edible species of bivalves exist in Kali. But the salinity as compared to the Aghanashini, the gradient of salinity is not that pronounced and lesser also. So, the bivalves which require intermediate salinity or near seawater salinity, their zones are getting shrunk. They are shifting more towards the river mouth. Whereas in Aghanashini, they have still natural distribution. Each bivalve, edible bivalve has its own salinity zone, relatively well protected compared to Kali, and therefore Aghanashini used to have something like 18,000 tons of bivalve production in 2008 when our team surveyed. So today one single bivalve fetches 1 rupee to 1.5 rupees, a single bivalve in the market, but the production is scanty due to over-exploitation. If 18,000 tons of bivalves are available today, the value will be exceeding 200 crore rupees in a year, and that too coming from less than 50 hectares of bivalve production area in the Aghanashini. So, therefore, there is a lot of need for educating the public, taking them into confidence, partners in management, the farmers, the fishermen, the bivalve collectors. They are to be taken as partners in management and a scientific management system where to accommodate as many people, as to protect as many people's livelihood, which have rice growing, mangrove fishery, crab fishery, the finfish fishery, then bivalve fishery, all together, every half hectare of Aghanashini, half acre of Aghanashini has got one family dependent for livelihood. Whereas in Sharavathi, nearly 5 acres of water is required to reasonably support one fishing family. So how a river can be hijacked? That is the silent story of Sharavathi in comparison to that of Aghanashini. Still, the time is not lost. We can still unite together, create necessary knowledge base, educate the public, educate the people in power. To sum up, so we can say that the story of Aghanashini is ancient, like the flow of the river from antiquity. It has not been dammed. Forests have not been much changed in the catchment areas. There are interventions, but still, by and large, Aghanashini flows quietly through centuries. Though the shellfish witnessed rampant exploitation these years, though fishery is also non-sustainably being harvested, but still by educating the public, by taking people as partners in conservation, the people in the sense the kaga growing farmers, the coconut growing farmers, the shellfish collectors, the fishing community people, all these have to be blended into a fabric of economy and in a streamlined mechanism highlighting sustainable use and perenniality of resources. Aghanashini is a classical case which is not beyond repair. It is possible if we can educate the public, educate the administrators, our representatives about the importance of Aghanashini, about a pristine river from its origin to its meeting place with Arabian Sea. How there could be some code of conduct, a code of discipline to be followed by all diverse kinds of resource users. It would be a model for entire West Coast, entire India, and considering the fact that Aghanashini is a Ramsar site, there is more patronage can come from even outside agencies for promoting sustainable use and maximum support for livelihoods. But Sharavathi case seems to be worsening with already the fishermen, most of the fishermen have migrated to other areas like Udupi or Goa for the livelihoods because there is very less of fishery in the Sharavathi estuary proper and even in the Sharavathi river mouth compared to that of Aghanashini. So, because of the dams and upsets in salinity regimes, but still, Sharavathi can be managed for tourism, education purpose, and nurseries for some prawns, etc. But once the port comes in Sharavathi, that everything seems to be doubtful, and adding insult to injury will be the pumped in storage for project, which is also being seriously considered for Sharavathi River.